Hello, and greetings from far, far away. My name is Kristin Reimer, and I am talking to you from a very sunny and warm Melbourne, Australia. I would like to say that I am deeply honored to have been selected to receive the Dissertation Award in the field of school climate from the School Community, Climate, and Culture SIG at AERA. Writing a dissertation, as I'm sure many of you can relate to, is a radically personal and vulnerable endeavor, one in which your thoughts, your passions, your mistakes, your insights, imaginings, hopes, assumptions, your wrong turns, and your eventually emergent understandings are really laid bare on the page for all to examine. It is extremely gratifying to have had my dissertation examined and found worthy of such a distinguished award. So my PhD dissertation was looking at restorative justice in schools, and it explored the effect that restorative justice might have on a school's climate from the student perspective. So I looked at two schools. I looked at a primary school in Canada and a secondary school in Scotland. And part of that was working to situate the student experience within the local, the regional, the national context. But really out at the center of those two case studies was the student experience. I learned from my students in a variety of ways. One of them was through student learning circles, where they were the experts teaching me about their experience, about their day-to-day life in school. And also I engaged a number of students, about 20 at each school, as student co-researchers, where for 3 days they observed their school. They had notebooks, they took note of whatever it was that they felt was significant about their overall experiences, interpersonal dynamics, school climate, how rules were handled or not handled, really their overall reality within schools. So students recorded in their notebooks what they thought was significant, and then they met with me one-on-one and really gave meaning to their notebooks. And what I found, rooted in what the students were explaining and teaching to me, what I found was that the ways in which restorative justice can be understood, implemented, and experienced in schools can really vary dramatically from one school to another. There's no one way that restorative justice can look. And there's no one way that restorative justice can affect school climate. So often those of us, and I include myself in there, who advocate for restorative justice in schools, we often feel that it can be a really radically different approach to discipline and ways of relating in school, radically different from the mainstream ways of doing things, because of the focus on relationships that restorative justice brings. And indeed, I found that it does have the potential to be radically different from the everyday mainstream way of doing things. But I also found that it has the potential to look and feel exactly the same as many punitive approaches to discipline and hierarchical ways of relating in schools. So in my study, I found that schools can use restorative justice to disrupt the status quo as a catalyst for social engagement, empowering students and transforming relationships in school hierarchies and school climate. But I also found that schools can use restorative justice to maintain the status quo as a tool of social control, reinforcing student obedience and classroom order with very little positive effect on school climate. I found that in each unique school context, restorative justice really was used in the service of the predominant relational objectives that operated in that school. That might be to engage the students or to control the students. And it was really the relationships, I realized, that permeated everything in the schools and shaped all approaches, restorative justice or any other approach, and what that looked and felt like. So for me in my study, the power of exploring restorative justice in schools was that such an exploration provided a window into the core of the school, which was the character and the quality of school relationships. So I'm particularly thrilled to be receiving a dissertation award about school climate, because I think there's just so much potential to tease out that character and the quality of school relationships in relation to school climate. We know that relationships are central to school climate, but we also know that relationships are not inherently good. So what sorts of relationships encourage a school climate in which students can thrive and develop? And what sorts of relationships encourage a school climate in which students are controlled and managed? And these are some of the questions that I'm continuing from my PhD to work through now in my new location in Australia. I would really like to thank Dr. Adam Voigt and Dr. Lisa Bass, the co-chairs of the School Community Climate and Culture SIG, as well as all the various scholars who were reviewers of the award submissions. I deeply appreciate the time and the effort that goes into making such an award possible. And please know that as a new scholar, the award is immensely encouraging, and your efforts really are appreciated. I would also like to take this chance to thank my wonderful thesis committee members, Dr. Richard Barwell, Dr. Ruth Kane, Dr. David Smith, and Dr. Joel Westheimer, all from the University of Ottawa, and my external examiner, Dr. Dorothy Vandering from Memorial University, and all the people, the students, the teachers, the principals, others, both in Scotland and in Canada, who participated so fully in my study and worked and lived with such engagement. Finally, I'd like to say a word of thanks to my supervisor, Dr. Lorna McLean, who continuously supported and challenged me during my whole of my thesis. I regret not being at the conference in person, both to accept the award and to meet all of you and have all the wonderful conversations that go along with such a conference. I really appreciate the chance to respond via video. Thank you for that. Thank you. I am honored. All the best.